Okay, I now declare the March 2026 Agenda Briefing Forum open at 6:30 p.m. and I welcome all those in attendance. I now invite Councillor Hong to read the acknowledgement to country.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The City of Melville acknowledges the Bibbulmun people as the traditional owners of the land on which the city stands today and pays its respect to the Whadjuk people and elders both past and present.
Thank you, Councillor Hong. Now I draw your attention to the disclaimer on the screen. The affirmation of civic duty and responsibility on the screen. The advice of audio-visual live streaming and recording on the screen. The purpose of the Agenda Briefing Forum on the screen. Item 2, attendance and apologies. I advise that Councillor Spanbrook is attending electronically with my permission. It appears that she will be back shortly. Additionally, there are no councillors providing an apology or leave of absence for this evening. And we're moving on to okay, we're on to item 3, declarations by members. We now move on to declarations by members. Are there any declarations by members who have not read and given due consideration to all matters contained in the business papers presented before the meeting? Nil. Declarations by members who have received and not read the elected members' bulletin? Nil. And I see Councillor Spanbrook has returned. Can you please confirm that you're in the meeting, Councillor Spanbrook?
Yes, in attendance, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Item 4, announcements by the presiding member. One deputation has been approved for tonight's meeting from Mr B McCarthy of Applecross on behalf of Planning Horizons in relation to item UP 26104, Local Planning Scheme 6 Amendment, Additional Use Medical Centre, 729 Canning Highway, Applecross. I will call you forward prior to the discussion of the item to make your deputation to council. There are no approved written submissions received for this evening. Item 5, disclosure of interest. Can the Head of Governance please advise if there are any disclosures of interest for this evening?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, no disclosures have been received for this evening.
Thank you, Ms Newman. Any further disclosures from elected members? There are no further disclosures, so we're moving on to item 6, public question time. I now open public question time at 6:33 p.m. No questions have been received with notice this evening. There are no members in the gallery asking a question, so I now close public question time at 6:34 p.m. We're on to item 7, awards and presentations. This item will be dealt with at the ordinary meeting of council. Item 8, applications for new leaves of absence. This item will be dealt with at the ordinary meeting of council. 9, confirmation of minutes. This item will be dealt with at the ordinary meeting of council. 10, new business of an urgent nature. There is no new business of an urgent nature. 11, identification of matters for which meeting may be closed. Item C26368, update disposal for 10 Canning Highway, Attadale, has been identified as confidential. I will hold it to the end of the meeting so we can move behind closed doors if necessary. Item 12, petitions. This item will be dealt with at the ordinary meeting of council. Item 13, adoption of recommendations en bloc. This item will be dealt with at the ordinary meeting of council. Item 14, reports. We now move on to the items for this evening. I'll bring forward item UP 26104, Local Planning Scheme 6 Amendment, Additional Use Medical Centre, 729 Canning Highway, Applecross, for Mr McCarthy for the purpose of receiving a deputation on this matter. So, Mr McCarthy, Mr McCarthy, will you please make your way to the microphone to make your deputation? You will have 10 minutes to speak, with a further 5 minutes for elected members to ask questions.
Good evening, elected members. Thank you for taking the time to see me this evening. I'll keep it very brief. I certainly won't need the full 10 minutes. It's a very simple application. Back in 1999, the subject building was constructed with the intent to be a medical centre, thus the size of it and the number of car bays that are currently on site. Due to the CPS scheme number 5, I believe it was limited as consulting rooms, which was 2 consultants at any one time. Given the demand for medical centres in today's world, and particularly around the local community, given the community is generally ageing, there is now a much greater need for this medical centre to flourish into its full form. Therefore, we're simply looking to have the additional use of medical centre approved for the site. We're only looking at a maximum of 5 practitioners at any one time, plus 10 supporting practitioners, which will be GPs, dental and other medical services, given that the facility already exists with multiple rooms and the facilities to perform those services. There are no extensions proposed to the existing building. There are no additional plan proposed to the additional building, and there's no additional car parking proposed to the additional building. Under the current town planning scheme, the number of car bays comply on site, although there are some bays that are smaller than the prescribed 2.6 metres by 5.4. So there's going to be some minor rejigging required in the landscaping area to accommodate the increased size. Other than that, there's no real impact on the neighbours. The building itself, the built form's not going to change. The landscaping itself isn't going to change. If anything, it'll be improved slightly. And the signage will remain consistent with what's there at the moment. I do understand that there was an objection to it, concerned about the traffic. Whilst there will be increased traffic to the site, there will not be any increased traffic along Canning Highway. Canning Highway is obviously a very, very busy road as it is. So therefore, any increase in traffic will be negligible. Main roads have responded and they're in support of the proposal, as have our traffic engineer. All in all, it's a very sound proposal. It's consistent with the existing built streetscape of Canning Highway and Applecross, and will only be benefit to the community for an existing service that is well below its current serviceability. That is it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr McCarthy. Are there any questions from elected members? If there are no questions, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you. It's the first time for me.
Very good. All right, now Mr Ponton, Manager Strategic Urban Planning, will provide a short officer presentation. Mr Ponton, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are some slides. So I think most of the information has been covered in the deputation. We've obviously received an application to allow medical centre use on the site. It's currently zone residential 20, and the deputation has just outlined the purpose of the application and the scale of what would be proposed. Basically, with a scheme amendment, the decision for council is whether to initiate the amendment, and in initiating the amendment, that would trigger the commencement of a formal advertising period. We have undertaken preliminary advertising to assist the decision-making process as to whether to initiate or not. As been indicated, we received 1 objection and 1 submission of support. Pretty much for all the reasons as outlined in the deputation, the existing use, the fact that there's opportunity to manage any impacts with the conversion to additional practitioners, and its location. For those variety of reasons, we're recommending that the amendment be initiated. As I say, that would then go through the process, formal public comment period, and the item would then be represented back to council for council to make a final recommendation to the minister. That will probably do. As I say, the deputation has covered off on much of the detail of this application, so if there is any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr Ponton? Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks, Mr Ponton, for your presentation. My question is just about the zoning, because there's a line in the report that says that if the council decides not to initiate the proposed amendment, then that would result in the site remaining a residential R40 zone. But my understanding after reading the report was that that's what the proposal is, to keep the zoning as R40 residential, but add an additional use. So I'm just seeking some clarity on whether a zoning change is proposed or if it's just adding an additional use, but keeping the zoning the same. Thank you.
Mr Ponton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The scheme amendment being sought is to add an additional use of medical centre to the existing base zoning of residential R20. So it would remain residential R20, but would have the ability to be used for a medical centre and therefore more than the current restriction of 2 practitioners.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just in relation to this amendment or this request, and I understand that we've also previously had one, I think, for Marmion Street. There was a similar situation. I imagine that there are quite a few of these examples where the zoning is R20 and it might have a permitted use of consulting rooms, but not medical centre. Is there going to be any, review of where other cases might exist? I'm just a little bit concerned about sort of ad hoc zoning or permitted use changes for individual properties, and whether it will just sort of open the floodgates of every single other centre in a similar sort of situation to this one then applying for a change in use.
Mr Ponton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess the beauty of retaining the residential zoning is that provides additional control over scale of any operation. It also to allow more than 2 practitioners on site does require that scheme amendment process. The council would have a high degree of control over that scheme amendment proposal. Initiation of such, and we wouldn't be recommending initiation of additional uses for additional practitioners or medical centre purposes unless the sites were in an appropriate location. The one in Marmion Street was on the edge of a existing centre. This site is already operating since I think 1999 as medical use. So there would be that strategic assessment before we would recommend initiating an amendment.
Are there any further questions? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next item. I will bring forward the following items for because officers have requested. There are 4 items and they're all of a planning nature. UP 2595, Review of Local Planning Policy 1.7, Telecommunications Facilities and Communications Equipment. The next one is UP 2596, Review of Local Planning Policy 110, Amenity. UP 2597, Review of the Local Planning Policy 3.3, Exhibition and Display Homes. UP 26102, Review of Local Planning Policy 1.2, Design Review Minor Administrative Changes. Ms Bainbridge, Manager Development Approvals, will provide an officer presentation on these 4 items. Please hold any questions for Ms Bainbridge until the end of her presentation. Ms Bainbridge.
Thank you. So these policy reviews are all very administrative in nature, so sorry for the volume that have come through, but I have presented these at a couple of elected member engagement sessions to sort of give a bit more background. So it's really important that we review our local planning policy frameworks regularly to ensure that they remain valid and also that they remain, I guess, relevant. We have a number of planning changes. Planning seems to change every day these days. And so it's really important that we make sure that our policies are always up to date and reflect the current needs of our community. Even if there's limited changes required, it's really important that we undertake these reviews regularly so they can be relied upon in decision making. As in decision making, there's this concept called due regard, which is really important, and how old a planning framework can impact on how much a policy is used in decision making. So having really recent policies means that we can rely upon them, whereas if they get a bit old, decision makers may not find them as useful in their decision making. Sorry, next slide, please. So in relation to telecommunications and communications equipment, this applies to telecommunications infrastructure on zoned land. So that's very rare circumstances. Most infrastructure is located on reserves and it's usually public works, but very rarely there's some telco that may be required or some specialist equipment that maybe would need to be required for certain buildings. Some of the key updates that we're proposing is just making it really clear as to when this policy applies, including additional policy objective to that effect, making it clear what proximity means. So we've added a distance, inclusion of anti-graffiti requirement on any blank walls for any infrastructure, distinction in decommissioning to require that the building is made good, so you don't left with a bit of an ugly wall or something like that if someone's removing infrastructure. Removal of the requirement for initial temporary structure, as we've never really used this requirement, is either appropriate or not, and distinction on advertising requirements. Sorry, next slide, please. The next policy we've updated has been the amenity policy. It was last reviewed in 2019, so a good 6 years ago. 7 years ago. So we've proposed an additional objective to address non-residential uses in the residential zone to make it clear as to when we would consider them appropriate or not. We reordered the upfront sections to align with some recent reviews, some minor clarification edits, just to assist in interpretations. The amenity definition from the regulations has been included, so make it really clear, and direction to case law as to consider how to best define amenity. It's a really annoying planning term, but it's all context driven based on the development and the location. And we've also included non-residential provision to cover impact from noise and traffic to within levels expected for a residential area, more specifically. And we've also included reference to our local planning strategy because that has really good information which aids us in determining amenity, and also considering considered future and permitted encourage land uses in amenity considerations. So for example, we've got a mixed area and we want to encourage that type of development. You don't want to have a more heavily commercial/industrial use move in there. So that sort of provision is now covered within this policy. Sorry, next slide, please. And then we have the exhibition and display homes. Really simple updates to this one. It's been working really well. It was last reviewed in October 2019. It only applies to standalone homes and suites in apartments, which are usually like sale suites. And it's just some minor clarification edits and referral to Local Planning Policy 1.1, which is our planning processes and decision making for advertising requirements. This last policy that we've reviewed is in relation to design review. This policy establishes a process to enable substantial proposals to have peer review by a group of design professionals, qualified design professionals, and we propose this review to align with the State Government Guide to Local Government Design Review. So we've changed the name of the group to Design Review Group. So that's basically to remove any confusion with a development assessment panel. We've updated the membership to expand the specialist requirements to align with the DPH manual, and we've also been able to rely on residents to be given priority for appointment given the expansion of the specialist pool. We've now required our panel to be, or so group, I should say, sorry, my bad, appointment by council to align with other local governments. And we also allow for temporary extension of time and replacement of member appointment to enable flexibility given the council appointment requirement, and also to ensure we can have appropriate conflict management. And we've outlined what does and doesn't need to go to design review to make it clear as to what's appropriate to and what will be effective for design review and what's maybe not based on the cost-effective use of this service. We've also included reference to a terms of reference to provide the operational details a little bit more so, and also listed the number of reviews generally required in the timing, so generally required 2 reviews prior to lodgement and then 1 review afterwards. Allow for the chair to undertake minor reviews to help expedite this and make it a more efficient a service, and also specify the financial reimbursement within the terms of a reference to enable annual review so that we're industry competitive. So all of the changes can be classified as administrative in nature, and what this means is that council may consider the changes to be minor and hence adopt without requiring advertising under the regulations. This is what is recommended by administration. If this is supported, then we would publish the revised policies. However, if seeking to advertise, it would be recommended to undertake this for 21 days as per the regulations, minimum advertising period. And if no objection and submissions is raised, then it may be adopted, then we would recommend it's adopted under delegation. So if that is that alternate is recommended or preferred by elected members, we can draft alternate recommendation accordingly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms Bainbridge. Are there any questions from elected members? Councillor Robbins.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'll start with a question about the amenity policy. So in clause 1.3, it talks about the council may require the submission of an amenity impact statement. Just wondering if that should be the city, because I'm assuming it wouldn't come to council for a decision about whether an amenity impact statement is required, or would it?
Yes, absolutely. It should be, sorry, through the chair. Yes, it should be through the city, not the council. Thank you for that pickup.
Councillor Robbins.
Thank you. Just a question about the display homes policy. So, or it's more just a note, I think. Under the second sentence under definitions, I think is just missing the word "an" prior to the word "initial."
Is that an administrative thing? Yeah, okay, thank you. I imagine that's been noted. Are there any further questions for Ms Bainbridge? Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. In relation to the amenity policy, can we add a couple of other classifications of non-residential, like aged care, to that, please?
Ms Bainbridge.
Thank you, through the chair. I guess with aged care, it is typically residential, but depending on the context of the facility, there might be a higher care component and more staffing requirements. So it is more, I guess, nuanced to the specifics of the aged care facility. This amenity statement is really good guidance, but ultimately if someone's proposing an aged care facility, we would be requiring them to address the suitability of that use in the zone as well, and we can definitely point them to this policy accordingly. But I do not see any issue with specifying that more specifically. But I wouldn't necessarily say it as a non-residential use. I would recommend that it's specified more specifically.
Just
Councillor Wheatland.
Maybe residential aged care then.
Ms Bainbridge.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, through the chair. We are more than happy to accommodate that. It's something we would be requiring anyway to address the amenity impacts of these types of land uses and how they operate slightly differently from a typical residential land use.
Would that be done administratively, or is there a need for some direction from council next week?
I believe I can accommodate that administratively.
Thank you very much. Councillor Robbins, You had a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a few questions around the DRG policy to help me form a picture around the financial implications. So I'm happy for these to be taken on notice and just responded to later, but just a few questions. So how many panel members are sitting on the panel each time it meets? How many hours do the meetings usually or generally go for? How many items would be considered per year? And is the fee set by us or the state government? Thanks.
Ms Bainbridge?
Thank you through the chair. I will take those questions on notice more specifically. The fees are set by local government, however, in relation to the reimbursement of members, and the manner in which the meetings are run are pretty standardised across the board in accordance with the recommendations, but I will come back with more specific information, especially in relation to the number of reviews and potentially also look at benchmarking with other LGs. We have a number of, I believe that compared to other local governments, we may be sort of slightly behind in terms of number of reviews that we are undertaking. Last year, we had hardly any items go through design review because we don't send things like childcare centres through or other minor commercial developments like other local governments would. So we're very effective and efficient in the way that we use our design review to maximise impact and its effectiveness and usefulness to our assessment process.
Thanks very much.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your presentation, Ms Bainbridge. I've just got a question about the design review group. It's about the scope of the group, and I note that really we're just asking the group to make a decision based on the 10 design principles of the State Planning Policy 7.0. And I wonder whether we should have in there that it would be, and it's something that bothers me, is that sometimes the design review group make decisions which are contrary to our local planning policies. So I wondered whether there should be a dot point in there that asks them to, if not adhere to, be mindful to our it does say adhere to the requirements of this local planning policy, but it doesn't say anything about adhering to the requirements of our local planning policies, and I wonder whether that should be included in this policy.
Ms Bainbridge?
Thank you through the chair. The design review process is not to replace the planning assessment process. That's my team's job to undertake a planning assessment against the local planning policies, and the design review group is to provide design advice against the 10 principles of good design. One of those principles, though, is context, and so it's our job as officers in briefing them on the level of, I guess, compliance with the planning policies and the planning framework applicable to help guide them as to potentially the level of discretion that's being exercised and how appropriate that discretion may be. But ultimately, they're not a decision-making group. This is why we've renamed it a group. It's a panel, and it's advice that helps us as assessing officers in preparing recommendations, and also helps the determining bodies, be it council or development assessment panel, in determining, is this really good design? As we find in some circumstances, it could be really good design but not meet the planning requirements, or it could meet the planning requirements and be really poor design. So by having both a planning assessment and design review together, it helps decision makers make a balanced decision on the appropriateness of a development.
Would it be useful then to have somewhere in the policy scope that the design review group is to receive advice from your department with regards to context and local planning policies?
Ms Bainbridge?
Thank you through the chair. I'll take that on notice as to how best that may be captured in a policy provision and advise.
I hear what you're saying, but I'm just wondering if you weren't here, would other people know that they're meant to provide the design review group with the appropriate information?
Ms Bainbridge?
Thank you through the chair. I'll just double check the terms of reference as to the procedures, but generally as a draft agenda, the officers provide a briefing, and the briefing is to provide advice on the planning framework. So that's generally how it works, but I would have to provide a more robust response and detailed response once I've checked the terms of reference and also the state guidance on this and potentially look at ways I may better articulate a provision, if we can, as to capture that.
Thank you, Ms Bainbridge. Councillor Lim.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just on the amenity policy, because I did note that one of the consideration was factoring in more future amenity. So I'm thinking of an example of the development in the 25 Almondbury and Infinity 8 apartments. So I know there was a house that's being stuck in between the two massive development, like 4 stories. So how would, I guess, the changes here assist in preventing that in the future, where I guess the future development of 23 Almondbury, which is stuck in between, can sort of like not develop any further because there's no space to build and there's no, I guess, nowhere to go from here. Yeah, thank you.
Ms Bainbridge.
Thank you, through the chair. I wish I had an answer for that. That was really robust. It's a really difficult issue and problem in infill areas that I don't think other local governments have to deal with as much as Melville, with the development pressure we're seeing in certain locations where we have these leftover parcels. I might even throw over to Mr Ponton as to we've investigated, I believe, any sort of strategies around these leftover parcels as to what we can do with them and what we can do to prevent it. This policy is more generalised in nature, and I think that's a more specific issue that may require a more nuanced response. But yeah, it's a very good question, and I wish it's a very curly problem that I wish I had an answer for. I'm very sorry.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Whitman. Sorry, is Mr Ponton, do you wish to respond?
I think we might respond on notice.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you. Just a couple about the amenity. That policy as amended, is that going to strengthen or weaken the city or the council's position if a planning decision is challenged at SAT?
Ms Bainbridge.
Got one more.
Oh, thank you, through the chair. Absolutely strengthen. One of the biggest things we found, it wasn't specific enough in relation to non-residential uses in the residential zone, where amenity is, the most needed to be protected. So as we're seeing with, childcare developments and other non-residential developments in the residential zone, we really need to strengthen our policy framework to make it really clear as to applicants what we expect in terms of an amenity outcome and how they need to document and prove that it won't have an adverse impact. So it is definitely seeking to strengthen our position in the SAT, also making reference to our local planning strategy and also directly referring to, this, you need to address SAT case law, as to similar contexts, is only going to strengthen our position as to our expectation on lodgement requirements, as well as our defensive position in the SAT if we end up in that context.
Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you, and thanks for that. And so, I don't know how to say this. When you're talking about discretion, will that give officers additional discretion when you're assessing applications against the R codes as well? Or am I off track there?
Ms Bainbridge.
Thank you, through the chair. No, it doesn't seek to increase officers' discretion at all. It's a tool. This policy is very high level, and it's a tool to help us with applicants in establishing the documentation requirements that they would need to address when seeking discretion. So it's almost like providing applicants and officers more guidance and making it more specific rather than increasing it, the discretion, and making it more general. Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any further? Councillor York.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A question is just in regards to the DRG group. Do you have any idea how much it's going to potentially cost? So it appears to be uncapped as to how often you would refer things to that group. In terms of the fees, it was my understanding that the WA state government set a scale of fees, so I'm wondering why we aren't voting on picking a number on that scale.
Ms Bainbridge?
Thank you through the chair. It's accommodated in our operational budget, and it's well less than the cost of a planning officer in facilitating the service, and the value it brings is professional design advice to decision makers, which we otherwise wouldn't have access to. It's the hours that are allocated to each application is quite small, so it's supposed to be very high-level advice and review only. So as per Councillor Robbins' question, you'll have some more figures and stats, but we have a budget for it, which is well under, I believe, the net cost of employing an officer. So it's like probably about, I think, 50% of what cost of employing a statutory planning officer. So it's only, and the frame in which we refer applications is very specified in the policy, and we only receive a small number of those types of applications.
Just a quick
Yes,
follow-up.
Councillor York.
I'm just worried, are we going to be provided with some sort of semi-regular report on how this cost is going?
Ms Bainbridge?
Thank you through the chair. I'd have to take that question on notice as to how that could be appropriately reported if it's not already. I believe that there might already be captured in some of the financial reporting, so I'd have to take that on notice. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Thank you, Ms Bainbridge. And we'll move on to the next item. M2669, Walga Electoral Reform Advocacy Position. Are there any questions? Mr Yildiz, Director of Legal Governance and Risk, is available to take those questions. Are there any questions? If there are no questions, I'll move on to the next item, M2670, Review of Code of Conduct, Elected Members, Committee Members and Candidates. Are there any questions? Councillor Barber?
Oh, thanks. It's just a process thing. Have we got a code of conduct policy about this, or is it a code of conduct is just guidelines?
Mr Yildiz?
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, it is a policy position, but it is a code that is required to be complied with. So any guidelines around associated with that would just assist with councillors in understanding their obligations under the code, but also the procedural process around how complaints are dealt with and how they are to be managed by the local government inspector and then referred to the local government if they are behavioural breaches.
The only reason I'm asking is I think I saw somewhere there's a code of conduct policy, and so then I'm a bit confused. Why do we need a code of conduct policy if the code of conduct is guidelines in itself?
Mr Yildiz?
So the model code, which we have to adopt under legislation.
Yeah, but there's no policy specific.
Yeah, the policy has to be adopted under legislation.
Thank you. And through the chair, the model code of conduct is stipulated in the regulations. The requirement under the Act is that councils have to adopt a code, and therefore they adopt it on their basis to apply for them. The policy position is kind of articulated within what the code actually does, but because of the regulations themselves spell out exactly the model which is required to be adopted, it is exactly as the regulations articulate.
Councillor
Two
Barber?
things that do the same thing? Does it do the same thing? It
Through the chair.
kind of seems silly. Would that not be correct?
Okay, Councillor Wheatland?
Thank you. I just wondered how much money have we spent on code of conduct complaints over the last, I don't know, 2 to 4 years? Can you take it on notice?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I will.
Thank you. I think that would be the case. Okay, any further questions? If there's no further questions, we'll move on to item M2671, Deferral Petition Community Input to Policy Development. Are there any questions?
Um,
Councillor Barber?
Oh, thanks. I think it's explanatory. I was just going to say, why, can somebody just give a succinct answer? Why has it been deferred again?
Mr Gildas?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The content and the request in the petition actually deals with the committee structure, which we are just about ready to present to EMS. So whilst the council resolution required it to come back in March, we weren't ready to have the committee structure discussion. We are pretty much now, and we'll be presenting it to the next EMS. Therefore, the council, what we'll recommend to council, will deal with the petition in April.
Are there any further questions? If there's no further questions, we'll move on to the next item. C26-365, investment statements for January. Are there any questions? I'll move on. C26-366, schedule of accounts paid for January. Any questions? Moving on, C26-367, statements of financial activity. Are there any questions? If there are no questions, moving on to item CD 2658, deferred consideration of feasibility of an advertising policy for restricting alcohol and unhealthy food advertising on or in city-owned property. Now, I advise that a rescission motion has been received by the administration that relates to this matter. The rescission motion seeks to revoke 3 points of the resolution of Council from March 2025. The impact statement is currently being drafted, and the rescission motion and impact statement will be circulated as soon as possible. So in relation to the item before us, Ms Pickering, Director of Community Development, is able to take questions on the item. Councillor Robbins.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. So just a question about process regarding the rescission motion and the item. Would the rescission motion be considered before the item? Because they're sort of linked. So if the rescission motion is carried, that would impact on how councillors approach the item itself. So how would that process be managed next Tuesday night?
Ms Newman, Head of Governance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, thank you for the question, Councillor Robbins. A part of the impact statement will address the fact that there is an item before Council, and we would time it so that it would be dealt with beforehand. So depending on the outcome of the resolution motion, the rescission motion, that would give Council then the understanding of whether or not the item that follows could be dealt with or not.
Thank you. So just to follow up, I think I've submitted an alternate motion for the officer's recommendation to go hand in hand with the rescission, which would obviously only come into play if the rescission went through. So in the case that the rescission is carried and the council chooses to rescind parts of the previous recommendation, would we then go to the alternate motion on the item?
Ms Newman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and again through you. We will consider that as part of the process because we received your alternate motion before we received a valid rescission motion. That was only received this afternoon. We're currently working through all the validity and the implications of that rescission motion as business stands at this point in time. So we will consider that as part of the entire process. Thank you.
Would Councillor Robbins be able to influence that if she, in fact, had preference with her alternative motion? Could she have the option of saying that the rescission motion, it would be more appropriate for the rescission motion to go first, or is that a decision that governance will come to?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. We will consider the entire package because we need to understand the current state of play of the 4 points that are being rescinded, the 3 points that are being rescinded, and the impact of Councillor Robbins' suggested alternative motion versus where we're at this point in time. It may not be appropriate to move that depending on how much work has or hasn't progressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, are there any further questions on this matter? Councillor Woodall.
Just regarding the process that's been discussed, given the recommendation is just noting, basically noting where we're at, it would seem to me that whether the recommendation is supported or not really doesn't have any actual effect on the item. Is that correct?
Ms Newman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Woodall. Again, we're just trying to understand the entirety of the package of work that needs to be rescinded, and it may be a case of noting and that no further work progresses, or it just may be noting, or there may be an option to progress to an alternative motion. We only got it late this afternoon, so we are still working through all the details around it.
Any further questions? Councillor Wheatland.
Excuse me. Through you, I guess I've got questions around if the rescind motion gets up, then what costs have we already spent on the original motion that was approved? So I'd like to understand that as well. I guess that would all form part of the report of the rescind motion, and the risk as well, the risk.
Ms Newman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. They will all form part of the impact statement.
Councillor Spanbrook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to check, has Councillor Robbins, I think she said it was an alternative motion, is that correct? Has that been circulated? Thanks.
Ms Newman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you. No, it has not been circulated because we didn't have the valid rescission motion at the time it was submitted.
Can I ask, how long ago was Councillor Robbins' alternative motion submitted? Because I'll ask that first.
Ms Newman.
I'll need to take that on notice. I can't remember the exact date. Thank you.
Just to clarify, because the rescission motion, which was finally signed last night, so that was actually sent this morning. Is that correct? You received it this morning first thing?
Ms Newman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We did receive it this morning, but it wasn't processed until this afternoon.
Okay, understand. Thank you.
Okay, are there any further questions on this item? If not, Councillor Lim.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick question. So, just on the deferral, I understand that they were saying that there was no impact on, I guess, sponsorship revenue on city-managed facilities. Can I just get more clarity around that? Thank you.
Ms Pickering.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. So if I could just clarify, so the sponsorship around city facilities was going to be addressed as part of the policy. So that part of the recommendation, original officer's recommendation or original resolution from council is the part that we are deferring. So there has been no impact on what clubs can do in terms of advertising in their facilities. So there's no financial impact at this stage to the club.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? If there are no further questions, we'll move on to the next item, which is CD 2657, Adoption of the Community Safety Technology Rollout Plan 2026 to 2031 and other CCTV-related matters. Now, I advise the administration have received 3 alternative motions associated with this item. These are currently being processed and will be circulated as soon as practicable. Ms Pickering, Director of Community Development, is available to take questions on this item. Are there any questions? Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just in relation to the federal funding grant that's been secured, could we just have a bit more, I guess, information as to what the terms of that grant are and what it relates to? And what I mean is whether the long-term plan for the fixed CCTV is a requirement of that grant. So just around, what the terms and conditions are of that grant and ensuring that we can access it.
Ms Pickering.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. I will certainly circulate the detailed terms and conditions. I think it's probably more accurate for you to review those verbatim. My understanding, though, is that it's for fixed CCTV. The city submitted through its application 11 locations with the caveat that the locations and the plan had not been endorsed by council, and it was on that basis that the funding was received.
Councillor Green.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A similar question, I guess. I was just interested to know whether there was much input from the federal government, perhaps federal member, regarding the locations of the fixed CCTV, and if we could just have a little bit of clarity around that.
Ms Pickering.
Thank you, Councillor Green, and thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. No, there was no direct involvement from the federal member in terms of site selections. They had purely come from the report that went to community consultation, however, all of those sites are within the federal member for Tangney's electoral boundaries. Thank you.
If I could have a quick follow-up as well.
Yes, Councillor Green.
I was just curious to know why there seems to be a high concentration around riverside locations when, if we look at if you look at crime statistics, it seems that we've got some areas that have higher crime rates. For example, Brentwood, that across the three phases, we don't seem to be planning on a single CCTV camera.
Pickering.
Thank you again for your question, Councillor Green, and through you, Madam Mayor. The way the locations and phases were determined was based around three community safety benefits. The first, improving the community sense of safety by providing a visible deterrent and supporting responsible behaviour. Enabling the MelSafe officers to respond promptly to antisocial behaviour detected through live monitoring and reducing the impact of crimes, accidents and emergencies. And then finally, supporting city investigations and waypool inquiries by capturing real-time events, timelines and actionable evidence. So the officers really took a sort of an educated guess in terms of what we thought the elected members in the community would prioritise, and so as a result, the phase one focused on the high-use public open spaces, which do tend to be more in the riverside areas, and that is in direct response to the initial objective that I read out about improving the community's sense of safety by providing a visible deterrent. We don't always, crime statistics and reports of antisocial behaviour are definitely one of the factors that come into play when considering locations for CCTV, but it's not the only factor. We also, other than the community usage or the high use public open spaces, we also consider after hours activity and locations with low passive surveillance around, and also the reports of, rather than just focusing on crime, we also consider suspicious behaviour, graffiti, people having accidents, emergencies occurring in those areas, as well as antisocial behaviour and crime. But that's really just one of the factors. And then finally, the other thing that we have to consider in a whole rollout implementation is the logical and efficient network expansion. So that's including our cabling routers, power availability and infrastructure sequencing. So that has also been brought into place so that the plan can be delivered in the most efficient manner possible.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Spanbrook.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I have two questions. The first question is to Director Pickering. I'm just wanting to, if she can actually advise if it's normal procedure for officers to apply for grant funding prior to council resolution on items. Thank you. That's question one.
Ms Pickering?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. The grant became available whilst the city was in the process of engaging council and the community on the plan. Subsequently, a grant submission was made based and flagged very clearly that it was still pending council decision. It was determined that that was the best course of action because there was significant funding available and it would be more prudent to be successful in the grant funding application and then give the money back rather than have no grant at all to implement what council might finally decide. This is a unique grant funding pool whereby it's untied and it's 100% funding, so there's no matching by the city required for that particular grant. So it was quite unique.
A follow-up
Thank
for
you.
Ms Pickering, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, Councillor Spanbrook?
Thank you. Can the grant funding be repurposed?
Ms Pickering?
When I say repurpose, I'm referring to other community safety devices or other.
Ms Pickering?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Spanbrook, and through you, Madam Mayor. I will circulate the terms and conditions of the grant. My understanding, however, at this stage is that the funding was specific for fixed CCTV, but that will certainly be confirmed before the ordinary council meeting next week. Thank you.
Councillor York?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Director Pickering, I was just wondering, you said the grant funding was applied for on the basis of 10 sites. I'm just wondering what was the catalyst for it to balloon out to more than 20 sites in the plan?
Ms Pickering?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, thank you for your question, Councillor York. The plan was devised quite some time ago, and this was the plan that we went to community consultation with. In the meantime, the grant became available, and the grant was for $700,000. So we selected the first phases of the plan that we were currently engaging with.
Thank you. Councillor Woodall?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And without having seen all the detail and impact statements around the alternate motions, but would it be open to the council to proceed with the fixed CCTV locations identified as per the grant funding so that the grant funding is expended, but then to reassess further locations once the initial locations have been reviewed and have been in place for some period of time? Like, is it a requirement to approve the whole long-term plan now, or can we spend the federal grant money and then assess, how effective those fixed CCTV cameras are and then make decisions as to future implementation?
Ms Pickering?
Thank you for your question, Deputy Mayor, and through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, that's certainly a very good suggestion. The funding is not contingent on future rollout of the plan, so Council can certainly endorse an expenditure and rollout in line with the grant only at this stage, and then we can produce a report based on the success of the program so far with the decision gate at that stage should council wish to proceed. And the other thing as well, because we were quite clear with the grant funding that this was still subject to council endorsement, but if council did want to adjust the locations that we have submitted for the $700,000 grant, I feel quite confident, as long as they were still within the federal member for Tangney's electorate, that we would get support for that those changes. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Robbins?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With regards to the proposed home rebate, just querying how that would be administered, because the report talks about it being aligned to priority need rather than a first come, first served basis. So just wondering how the decisions are made by officers around where the priority is or who has the greatest need. Thank you.
Ms Pickering?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Robbins, and through you, Madam Mayor. So the officers have been developing a set criteria around the locations of home CCTV that would provide the best impact for the pilot. And that would be what the assessment would be made on. The way that we would run the grant round would be to open it for a certain amount of time, advertise it widely with those conditions and the criteria well established and communicated. And then once we'd received all of the applications, they would be graded and put into priority order against how they scored against the criteria, and those that scored the highest up to the cap that council endorses as the limit that they want to fund would be the ones that would be selected for funding or offered. Not everybody will necessarily always take up the offer, but we would go down the list until it was exhausted. Thank you.
Could I just ask a follow-up to that?
Okay, Councillor Robbins.
Thanks for the answer. So just to follow up, do you mean that the criteria would be largely linked to the pilot program? And if so, how would the criteria differ between now and when the pilot program's rolled out? Thanks.
Ms Pickering?
Sorry, thank you, and through your question, sorry, that wasn't very well clearly answered. No, there would be criteria for both of those. The pilot program at this stage is an opt-in for a future pilot program, so there would be additional criteria that we would be using for the fit for that particular program, but there would still be criteria for the non-pilot program submissions.
Councillor Spanbrook.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. My question is actually to Director Coton. I can't quite see, is Director Coton there tonight?
Yes, he is.
Oh, thank you. Director, I'm just wanting to know, with regard to this, the fixed CCTV cameras, that we're adding a whole new asset class to our asset management plan. So, with regard to this, that the information I've received from the officers that the cameras and core network equipment, they'll have a 5-year warranty. And so when you consider the planned asset renewal provision, can you provide some information on how this will be planned? And we also, with regard to the cost associated with it, without taking into account the actual, replacement or renewal costs of the actual camera equipment, including the labour, commissioning allowance, and other equipment to go with it, or even with regard to the server and the technology. I hope I haven't confused you with that question. If it's okay, thanks.
Mr Coton.
Oh yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Certainly the whole of life costs would need to be considered. I don't have that information to hand. I'm not sure if Ms Pickering has that, but we certainly can provide some information on that.
Thank you. Councillor Ms Pickering?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, the asset lives are really around two aspects. So there's the cameras and the core network equipment, and then there's the civil infrastructure, which is the poles and mounts. I don't have the detail around the civil infrastructure, which Mr. Coaten's team will, I'm sure, help us calculate. However, in terms of the asset lives for the cameras and core network equipment, the estimates that we have based on this 2026 pricing is that for 11 cameras that we've established for the grant, it would be $30,000 per year, and that covers both the minor maintenance and sundry replacement and also the planned asset renewal. So, but that isn't including the poles and mounts, which is that infrastructure that Mr. Coaten's team will provide detail on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Pickering. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just looking at the estimated financials here, and for 5 locations, it's going to cost $740,000, and for 12 locations, an additional $840,000. So my question is, if this fixed location is adopted, are we committing to that extra $880,000? And I've heard that we can limit it, but what changes do we need to make to the proposed motion in order to ensure that we're only committing to spend the $700,000 funding?
Ms Pickering.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Ross, and through you, Madam Mayor. You could certainly, there's two sort of business as usual functions that can assist council to control the spending. Firstly, through the annual budgeting and planning process. Not approving any additional expenditure on CCTV outside of the $700,000 grant. We are putting up at the moment for the 26-27 budget that we'll be having a workshop on tomorrow, that only that grant is the money that is spent. So we're not proposing that council put in any additional money from reserves or municipal funding for this program. So that's one avenue. But also, if council wanted to, they could put in an additional alternate motion just to clarify and cap that. And that's another way that can be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Pickering. Councillor Spanbrook.
Thank you. My question to Director Pickering, I think it's similar to Councillor Woodall's, but I just didn't capture all his question. It's just regarding the 11 sites for the CCTV, just by utilising the $700,000 grant funding. If this was put in as a trial basis for 12 months, would the cost to that be able to be retained or just be within that $700,000? And then if the results that come back aren't, perhaps adequate or what would have been expected, then for the removal or, of the equipment that has been placed, would that be additional, or could that actually be factored into the $700,000 grant funding? Thanks.
Ms Pickering.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Spanbrook, and through you, Madam Mayor. The 11 sites has been put forward for the $700,000. The current budget for those sites, if you do add them up, comes in over $700,000. These were preliminary figures based on sort of best known information at the time. What we would hope is that when we go to tender and we have one contract that looks at all of the CCTV, that we would get a better outcome in terms of what we could deliver for the $700,000. and that tender, of course, would come back to council. However, in terms of the grant, I would need to check the terms and conditions of the grant, but I'm not sure that it would be permissible for the council to run this on a trial and then pull the equipment out after 12 months, given that the federal government's paying for all of the equipment. So I would just need to clarify that, but I don't feel that they would be quite happy with that. Thanks.
Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms Pickering, Madam Mayor, through you, following on from Councillor Robbins' question about the criteria that staff would have to assess applicants for the CCTV, I might have missed it, but can you give us some indication about what that criteria might be?
Ms Pickering.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Barber. This is quite a technical one. I'm terribly sorry. I will take this one on notice. I know it has something to do with the location of the camera and its visibility on the street, but I wouldn't want to give you false information, so I will get that from the officers and provide that before their council meeting. Thanks.
So it's got nothing to do with the applicant themselves, it's got to do with the cameras and their placement.
Ms Pickering.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. That's my belief, but I will confirm that.
Are there any further questions? I have a question pertaining to the riverside locations. I wanted to know if the cameras were proposed to be placed in popular locations along the river. Ms Pickering.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was waiting for you to direct your own question to me. Yes, the riverside locations are a combination of the very popular parks that we have, as well as car parks along the river, and also areas that we know are not necessarily big draw cards during the day, but do attract people after hours in particular, and also lack natural surveillance from shops and houses from being close by, or club rooms and change rooms. So it's a combination of all of those, with the first ones being the big public areas was what the officers were recommending, but obviously subject to council endorsement. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms Pickering. Councillor Spanbrook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to be sure, is it Director Coton or will it be Director Pickering who will be providing to all elected members before next week the whole of life costs for the fixed CCTV cameras?
Ms Pickering.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your question, Councillor Spanbrook. I will put that information into the officer's advice note before the next council meeting. However, the infrastructure costs, which was the poles and the mounts, will come from Mr Coton's area, and the community development, community safety team have provided the whole of life costs in terms of the cameras and the networking. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Okay, if there's no further questions, we'll move on to the next item. E2693, response to notice of motion Applecross Ferry Terminal Car Park funding. Mr Coton, Director Environment and Infrastructure, is available to take questions, and for the following two questions as well. The following two items, that is. Councillor Robbins.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. My question is just about, I guess, the response of the government, because, so on one hand, they're saying we're not going to provide any parking because the ferry terminal is already well integrated with other transport services, but I don't understand how they can make that claim, because it's quite a walk from where the proposed ferry terminal is going to be across to the Canning Bridge station, and they're not planning to divert any buses from Canning Highway to the terminal. So are there other plans or discussions being had that council isn't aware of yet, or is it just that they're claiming something that isn't really true?
Mr Coton.
I can't speak for the state government. The information that's provided is the current information that we've got. So, yeah, I can't speak on behalf of the state government in relation to their rationale.
Thank you. Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just in relation to the existing Tivoli car park and also the Raffles car park, which are, I guess, within quite a short walking distance of the proposed ferry terminal site, is there an opportunity, or what sort of capacity do they typically run at, and is there an opportunity to try and divert or to draw the attention of ferry terminal users to those car parks?
Mr Coton.
I'd have to take that on notice, Madam Mayor.
CEO, Ms Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So the Tivoli site is under a separate investigation process to look at the highest and best use options, and that will be coming back to Council. Mr Tuffin could provide an update as to where that study is up to and when it's expected to come back to an elected member engagement session.
Mr Tuffin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's correct. So work has commenced in relation to the possibility of parking on that site. There will be a workshop with Council, I believe, in April to explore some of the options that they're currently considering for that site, just to get some general feedback and direction from Council as to the suitability of those proposed land uses. So that project is progressing and will be reported back to Council shortly.
Okay, are there any further questions? If there's no further questions, we'll move on to the next item. Oh, you had a question? Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you. I just thought of it, like I know previously we've had lots of discussions around parking in this area, Applecross, Mount Pleasant. We've had lots of items come to Council with reports of significant amounts of car parking in, not directly in this area, but across this section of the City of Melville. Could we get that sent to us maybe? Or can we get all those different pockets put together in a report about the amount of parking available in close proximity to this area, including the motion that I think we moved about additional car parking at the Tivoli site, was it? Or yeah, please.
Ms Bowman, CEO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we can provide information about other studies we've done regarding car parking availability in the vicinity and send that to elected members. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Barber.
It's not car parking, but it's related to the whole infrastructure. What about bus routes to the bus station and the train station, as Councillor Robbins brought up? Is it just the ones on Canning Highway, or are there any other ones? I just wondered if there was. Is there any down Kintail Road? Does anybody know?
Mr Coton.
There are buses that go down Kintail Road to the best of my knowledge, but I don't have that to hand, so I can take that on notice and provide you with some information.
Okay, any further questions? Councillor Lim.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just in that presentation of the Tivoli site, would you be able to include sort of the, I guess, I don't really know how to word this, but like the chances of getting a grant if the site was, I guess, shovel ready to build a car park potentially? Thank you.
Ms Bowman, CEO.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I do believe that was part of the requirements for us to look at whether there's any funding available from the state government, so we would be looking at that as well. Thanks.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Green.
I was just wondering if in our process of seeking funding for a car park down there, whether we are making sure that we're not limiting ourselves to the potential of a site such as the Tivoli site, where without wanting to sound ingracious, I think sometimes grants can be something of a spanner in the works where we'd be loath to give away the funding, but it sort of commits us to doing something that may be of a scale that is not worthy of the site.
Are you suggesting?
So I'm just wondering, is that being thought of with this perhaps for the CEO? Is that being thought of when we're sort of approaching the government about grant funding?
Ms Bowman, CEO.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Mr Tuffin can provide more details, but we are definitely looking at the highest and best use options for that site. It was looking at the site potentially for investment purposes as well, but Mr Tuffin can explain that. But we're certainly not looking to apply for any grant funding to commit the council to anything. We'll go through a process with council regarding different options and the analysis and the findings and the constraints and opportunities for that site. But Mr Tuffin can provide more detail. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr Tuffin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, as part of the investigations, they're looking at the land optimisation study. So what they're doing is looking at the current constraints on the site and the highest and best use of the site, and that did include car parking. So that was one of the areas we did ask to be assessed in terms of would it be a suitable use for that site. So as part of the next workshop, I just had a look, it's actually on the 30th of March. We'll have the consultants in to provide a presentation to council to get some further direction on potentially 3 or 2 potential land uses to do further detailed investigations. So there'll be an opportunity for council there to sort of raise any further questions in relation to the possibilities of that site on that night.
Any questions? Any more questions? If there are no further questions, we'll move on to the next item. E2690, approval to demolish the Atterdale Scout and Baden Powell Girl Guide facilities. Are there any questions? Councillor Panayotou.
Turn this on. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one question. I know we've discussed this in the past, but can the officers confirm whether there is any long-term plan to provide a replacement facility for the Scouts and Girl Guides in the Atterdale foreshore following demolition, noting that the Scouts have been temporarily relocated to Point Walter?
Mr Coton.
The city will be undertaking a study of Scout halls as outlined in the report, so that will identify future requirements in the long term.
Thank you. Councillor Lim.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I guess how long will it take to rehabilitate the demolished site so that residents can start using it? Thank you.
Mr Coton.
I don't have an exact time, but we would obtain prices for the demolition. I don't want to sort of give a specific time, but it would be perhaps a matter of a couple of months, perhaps, would be typical for a demolition of a building.
And Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In relation to the Girl Guides Hall at near the Baden Powell Scouts, when this hall is removed, what is the city's plans to put there, or have there been any plans to put something where the Girl Guides Hall was?
Mr Coton.
No, there's no specific plans at this stage.
Can I just follow up, Madam Mayor? A resident thought they'd heard that it was going to be turned into a car park, so that's not accurate, Mr Coton?
Mr Coton?
I'm not aware of any discussions that it's going to be turned into a car park.
Thank you.
Councillor Robbins?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Could Mr Coaten please confirm exactly where these two facilities are located? Are they on the same site at Baden Powell Reserve?
Mr Coaten?
No, they're not. I don't have the addresses, the exact addresses to hand. The Baden Powell, I think it's in McCullum Drive. The name will come to me in a minute. I'll circulate the addresses separately, if that's all right.
Thank you. Yeah, so I found Baden Powell Reserve off McCallum Crescent, but I'm not sure where the Girl Guide Hall is. So that would be great. Thank you. And just another question, if that's okay, Madam Mayor. The Girl Guide Hall has been largely vacant for over 12 months. So is it being currently used at all? And if not, where do the Girl Guides currently meet?
Mr Coaten?
I don't believe it's being used by the Girl Guides. I believe there may be some occasional use. It's been, the community group is using it occasionally. The Girl Guides have been out of there for about, I understand, for about 12 months.
And so they're using another facility or meeting somewhere else?
Mr Coaten?
I might defer to Ms Pickering on that.
Thank you. Thank you through you, Madam Mayor. I understand that the Girl Guides have gone next door to the Scouts and are using their facility.
Councillor Woodall?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could officers please just confirm the membership of each group, so the Adelaide Scouts and the Baden Powell Girl Guides? And also, is the city, my understanding from the EMA's presentation was that the city's committed to finding a permanent home for both groups, is that correct?
Ms Pickering?
Thank you through you, Madam Mayor. I will need to take the question on notice, I'm afraid, about the club numbers. But yes, the city is definitely committed to finding them permanent relocation. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor York.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'm just wondering why the rush to demolish Baden Powell, because we've received correspondence that they're still hiring out to fundraise, and what is the risk in delaying demolishing it if it's still in somewhat active use?
Ms Pickering? Oh, Mr Coaten?
Yeah, so it is. There is extensive asbestos throughout the building. So, and asbestos, while it's in its solid condition, is relatively safe. But there is the risk that if sections of it get broken, it will become friable and will become a hazard. So, and there's no practical method to do any renewal there, so the only recommended option is to demolish it, and because of the asbestos risk, staff believe the sooner it's done, the better.
Councillor Robbins?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. So I believe that the Scout group have been running at the Adelaide Playgroup facility, and it says that they've had ongoing support and that arrangement is for up to 2 years. So after that 2 years runs out, are they sort of on their own financially? Is the idea that they'd have to find a place to continue to run, or if they stayed at the Adelaide Playgroup, they'd have to start paying fees for that instead of the city paying for it? How's that sort of going to play out?
Ms Pickering?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So in these 2 years, we'll find them a permanent home and make the arrangements in terms of either the city's financial contribution to it, either with the council resolution or with the Scouts themselves contributing to the cost. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Whitland.
I'm just wondering if we could be, I know it's be provided with an overarching bit more detail on the reports, because in here it says talks about structural issues, corrosion, non-compliant roof, steel, where is it, roof replacement, asbestos. I mean, it'd be nice to see some of the reports as evidence. Oh, was it? I missed the EMS. Okay. I'll go back and look at it. Thanks.
Are there any further questions? Okay, if there's no further questions, we'll move on to the next item, which is E2691, response to notice of motion, bus shelter lighting. Are there any questions? If there are no questions, we'll move on to E2692, response to notice of motion, additional green waste bins. I advise elected members that an alternative motion has been submitted for this item. This will be circulated as soon as practicable. Prior to discussion of this item, Mr Maloney, Manager of Resource Recovery and Fleet Services, will provide a short officer presentation. Mr Maloney, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll actually be doing the presentation, and Mr Maloney will be answering all the difficult questions.
All right. Thank you, Mr Coton, Director, Environment and Infrastructure.
So if we just move to the first slide, please. So as background, in August, there was a motion for staff to do a report on the practicalities of providing a free of charge FOGO bin to residents who are impacted by falling leaves. And so, so for the purpose of the report, we've estimated that that's going to be a period of approximately 3 months. We're recommending that the bins not be supplied due to operational, financial, logistical impacts, and also an additional FOGO bin is currently available to people on a user pays basis. There's quite a few assumptions in the report. It's very difficult to accurately predict the uptake and accurately predict the cost. So I just thought it best if I perhaps just run through the scenario, I guess the steps that we've proposed to implement it. I should also mention that in the August notice of motion that was decided, the resolution was to bring it back to the December meeting of council, but at the time staff were very involved with the resource recovery group and things like that, so we didn't have time to do that, so we've deferred it to the current meeting. So staff have assessed the typical trees and the locations for where we do get complaints about leaf drop and seed drop, and that's outlined in the report, so predominantly London Plains, Jacaranda, Queensland box trees and liquid amber. The details of that are included in the report. So it was very difficult to work out what the uptake would be. So we've done 3 scenarios just to provide, and I'd emphasise it really is just an order of magnitude. We're certainly not saying that these costs are particularly accurate because of the range of assumptions that we've had to make. So for 1,000 bins, if the uptake was 1,000 bins across the city, it'd be approximately 132,000, 2,000 bins, 215, and 3,000 bins, it'd be $298,000. So as the volume increases, there is some economy of scale and the unit cost does reduce slightly. With all of these scenarios, one of the issues is that for the other 9 months of the year, we don't have anywhere to store those bins. So we've done the assumptions based on, having to hire some storage space in the, to put them in. Specifically also highlighting that with these costs, none of them are included in our current budget. So these all would be additional costs, and while the intention is that they would be free of charge to the users who request that bin, that cost would be borne by residents as a whole. So we could move to the next slide, please. So just in terms of stepping through the process, we'd need for, depending on how many bins were taken up, if it was 1 or 2 or 3,000 or however many, we need to purchase them and assemble them and then deliver them to the properties that wanted them. There'd be the requirement for a truck to go around and empty them during that 3-month period, so there'd be additional collection costs with that. Again, it's very difficult to predict exactly what those collection costs would be. There'd also obviously be the disposal costs of the leaves when we take them to the FOGO plant and pay the gate fee. But with the actual collection itself, it really depends on, you know, if they're all located in the same area or they're spread out across the city. In reality, it's unlikely, or very unlikely, that every day there would be a full load for a truck and a driver, but it's very difficult to get a driver for just half a day. We'd be looking at contract drivers and things like that. It's difficult to get someone in for 2 hours of the day. So for the scenarios, we've based it on being, for that 3-month period, an additional truck and driver to handle that additional load. So at the end of the 3-month periods, the bins would need to be removed, cleaned and disassembled for stacking. So as part of that, it's a requirement to take the wheels off as well, so that the bins can be stacked inside each other and then taken to somewhere to store until the next year. So when the bins were stored, and again, it's a little bit, I guess there's a range of options and logistical difficulties. So the bins could be stored there till next year and then used again. And then in the second year they were used, the cost would be saved of having to buy a new bin. The other option that we could do would be during the year we get a requirement for new bins due to increased urban density, bins reaching the end of their life, vandalism, etc. So we could also use some of those bins and roll them out during the year and then buy new ones the following year. So it's very difficult. There's a lot of scenarios at play that make it difficult to identify the complete cost, the accurate cost. It is possible also we might lose revenue as well, because at the moment people can get an additional FOGO bin. If they pay $213 per annum, people get an additional FOGO bin for all 12 months of the year. So some people, if they're getting it specifically for the leaves, they might say, well, I won't pay that $213, I'll give that money back and I'll just get one that I don't have to pay for the 3 months. So. As I sort of mentioned earlier, that there's nothing in the budget for this, so anything, it would need to be funded by the city as a whole. So, that's a very brief snapshot of it. You can hopefully appreciate some of the logistical difficulties that staff would encounter if this was implemented. So, I'm happy to have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Coton. Are there any questions? Councillor Robbins.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. How many properties currently pay for an additional FOGO bin?
Mr. Coton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through the chair, I can get an accurate number. It's about $41,000 in income at the moment. I don't have a calculator on me to divide it. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Maloney. Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just if I was understanding the presentation correctly, so a resident for the additional bin, $213 per year, they could elect to have an additional bin for 3 months of the year, in which case it would cost them a quarter of that amount. Is that correct? And they can have it just for that shorter duration?
No, if somebody gets the additional bin, they get it for the 12 months of the year, and they pay that $213, and it's permanently at their property.
Thank you, Mr. Coton. Councillor Barber.
I'm okay now, Madam Mayor. I don't need to ask my question.
Thank you. Councillor Spanbrook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a question with regard to the storage of the bins. For the residents that take this opportunity of getting an additional FOGO bin, could a condition of it is that they need to keep it at their property? So it's, if they wish to have it, and even though it's free of charge, they then need to store it at their property for the whole duration, whether it be 1 year, 5 year, or 10 years, as long as they wish. And the second question is, because as the officer hasn't recommended this, what is the alternative then to actually assist the residents with regard to the huge amount of leaves that they have to deal with annually? Is there another option that could be provided for them? Thanks.
Mr. Maloney or Mr. Coton?
Yeah, I guess in regards to the bin being stored on site all year round, that potentially would be an option if council wanted to do that. Sometimes we find when empty bins are stored on property, they can, for a year, they can get lost. People don't particularly like them taking up the additional space, but they can be lost and vandalised if they're not regularly being used. But that would be an option. In regards to the other options that people have got, well, people do have the option of paying for another bin, another FOGO bin, and using it. We also do have programs where increased leaf drop, areas of increased leaf drop. We do increased street sweeping at the times of the year to align with that leaf drop as well. So there are other mechanisms in place.
Thank you, Mr. Cogen.
Mayor.
Pardon?
I do have a follow-up.
Councillor Spanbrook.
Thank you. That there is a resident, a Bull Creek resident who does have a investment property there, and he's quite an ageing gentleman, and he's actually had quite some difficulty in cleaning up, the leaves and everything himself. So he did say that a number of years ago that the residents were required to just put them in a bag, whether they were provided Hessian bags, I'm not really sure whether it was plastic or Hessian bags, and they were just left, on the curbside, and they were then collected. Could the city perhaps, return to that service they once provided? Thanks.
Mr. Maloney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor. That service stopped in 2018. It was stopped on the premise of two things: that FOGO was coming in 2019, and secondly, it was deemed an unsafe practice. We had issues with traffic congestion, manual handling issues because we weren't sure of the weight of the bags. There was all different types of bags, they used to split, and they had workers exposed to the traffic. So after discussions with a number of safety agencies, it was deemed we need to try something different.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. How much more frequently does the city run the sweeping service during winter compared to the other seasons? And what additional cost does that involve? Thank you.
Mr. Cogen.
Yeah, I don't have that information to hand, but I can provide it.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Panayiotou.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess when I look at this all kicked off before I was here, but what actually inspired this? What sort of numbers were requesting this new FOGO bin to actually, for us even to be talking about it here now? Do we have any indicative numbers of people requesting these extra FOGO bins?
Mr. Maloney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through the chair. Thank you, Councillor. I don't have the exact numbers on us. It's not many, but we have a number of complaints throughout the year with regards to leaf fall. It's clogging gutters, it's on my driveway and everything. Is there anything the city can do? That'd tally in maybe the small hundreds that we get a year, but we're talking 75 to 100 we get about these. Obviously, they pick up mainly the London Plains are one of the big issues that we find. We get complaints probably maybe one or two a month from there. That's it.
Okay, Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, do we have any idea what it would cost to pay staff, additional staff, to go out and do the verges? Because this is really where the residents are cleaning up, because the street sweeper doesn't get there. So any idea what that would cost if the city was to undertake that task?
So,
Mr. Cogen?
Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor. So, Councillor Ross, when you say for the city to clean up the verges, are you talking about raking the leaves from the verges, or?
Councillor Ross?
Yes. Part of the problem is that the leaves collect on the verges and on the footpath, and they become wet and slippery, and that's where the residents are going out and raking up and cleaning up. So that's generally where the excess leaves come from.
Mr Coton?
Yeah, I don't have a cost to hand. We could work out an hourly rate or something like that and to inform councillors to give you some information.
Are there any further questions? If there are no further questions, we'll move on. Item 15, motions with previous notice. A motion has been received today from Councillor Ross. This motion is being processed and will be circulated as soon as possible. Item 16, motions without previous notice. This item will be dealt with at the ordinary meeting of council. Item 17, matters for which the meeting was closed to the public. Well, we now move on to a confidential item for this evening. Can I get an indication from elected members whether you wish to discuss the confidential item C26368 update disposal 410 Canning Highway, Attadale? Does anyone wish to discuss it? Yes. We need to have a motion to move behind closed doors. Councillor Woodall moved, seconded Councillor York. Is there anyone opposed? If no one is opposed, I declare it carried. We're just going to shut the live streaming down, so please wait a moment. Item 18, decisions made while meeting was closed to the public. For the purposes of the notes, I advise that item C26368, update disposal, 410 Canning Highway, Attadale, was discussed behind closed doors. 19, for the purposes of the notes, can the following councillor please confirm her attendance? Councillor Spanbrook.
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Spanbrook. There being no further business, I declare the meeting closed at 8:24 p.m. Thank you very much for your attendance. Please wait for the live streaming to be turned off.
Good night, everyone.